We have sound, Cindy.
What?
I think I successfully did it. We have sound, Cindy. What? I think I successfully did it. Live.
We're a few seconds off from live.
Huh?
Sounds like we're a few seconds behind live.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. We're not there yet.
No. Is it just me or is it really hot in here?
I turned the air on as soon as I got in here. So.
Shut the doors? Will it help?
Shut the doors, sure. I'll shut the doors. You can leave this one crack a little bit so that they know.
Yeah, I'm not getting my
Okay, so it's just me today. It's just us.
Just us.
But
Can you scoot just so I can see the screen?
yeah, of course. Okay, so
A little more.
look good. Okay. Notice I have this set up.
Hey, Roger, kill the lights. Roger.
Well, we'll be fine for right now because we're gonna do some songs. So I don't have the prayer sheets. I didn't get them out. I've been working on this presentation for a while. So I guess if you have any prayer requests, I will put them on here and then I will put them on the sheet next week. Any prayer requests? Anything?
Yes, my niece Jennifer.
Gail. Niece. Jennifer.
Brain cancer.
How old is your niece?
She's 38, no, 38?
38.
I think she's 38 or 39.
So young.
She's been fighting since she's like 15.
This isn't even on the list because it's only for this. I have a trip coming up this weekend with my boyfriend, with my parents, and there's some things we have to talk about. So just pray for wisdom.
Of course.
Pray for my.
Is it a vacation trip?
Is it a what?
Vacation?
It is a vacation trip,
Where you
but
going?
it's also I'm going with my parents.
Oh, nice. I'm holding this over there.
I don't know.
Well, it's your turn to visit them.
What?
So,
It's your turn to visit them.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
so
down.
your niece, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
just
have
pray for
her.
traveling safety and pray for decisions that you made and things like that, and just wisdom.
I have a prayer.
Nothing huge, nothing
I have a prayer request.
earth-shattering. Just
Yeah, wisdom. Oh, of
Okay.
course, absolutely, I understand. I have a request for a guy named Tony, a young kid actually. I witnessed to him Wednesday. He was asking questions like, he goes, so if I just accept Christ, I'm saved? Like things like that. That's a big indication. And
So is this door to door with Sam?
yeah,
Yeah, he's telling me about something.
Tony, this kid, I mean, he was sitting there and I don't know. I think I had a great conversation with him. Sometimes you can kind of tell they're just kind of going with you, just to, okay, yeah, but I'm not kidding. Talk to him. Who knows? Who knows what God's going to do, right? We don't know. So I just pray for his salvation. I'll put that in here. Anything else? Roger, you got anything? Salvation.
I got an unspoken.
For prayer requests
Unspoken. Yep.
or something? Prayer requests? I pray for Amanda and the kids and Jesse. And I think Bianca was getting out today.
Okay. And,
She'll be back home pretty soon.
okay.
I would
And I'm going to put Pastor John and his family trip. You can't see but a time or something. Okay. Let's do some songs. I don't know if I should plug the amp in or not. We're going to keep it on the sheet because I do not know the songs as well as Pastor John does, so I practice every song up to number 31, so I should be good.
I was just gonna say 32. Seriously.
32? Really? Let's see what we got here. Oh, you love this song. I love this song too. Let me grab my other pick. I got this pick.
32?
I feel weird not bringing Pastor's water tonight.
I'll take some water.
Why did you bring it now?
Okay.
Do you want? There's some in the storage room.
Oh, I was just
No.
kidding.
Feel warm.
Yeah. Forgive me. I was strumming like crazy earlier, and I just want to make sure that this is in tune. Good? Good. You'll thank me when we play. Okay, good. Let's do this. Here we go. No amp. Of course. I like this.
I know. We had our discussion a couple weeks ago.
Where was that?
Yep.
No, that's what I told him. I said, come on, you know.
Number 2. Here we go. Come down, fountain, every blessing to my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise to teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I come, and I hope by thy when a stranger wandering from the fold of good interposed his precious blood. Let's do number 4. I practiced this song and I found a different way of kind of, we'll see. We'll just see. Number 4, Roger. I don't know if you got that on your sheet. I think I have it in my car. I'm sorry. I took it out of that book. But anyway,
I will call upon the Lord.
I will call upon the Lord.
You know that, Roger?
I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. I will call upon the Lord. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. I will call upon the Lord. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation 3.
Oh, we're doing one
Stick
page.
with the first
One page
page?
wonder day.
Alright, we can do number 3. I don't know if you have number 3 in there. In fact, I'm certain you don't because I took it on
Why so
accident.
downcast, oh my soul.
Why so downcast, oh my soul? You're hoping God. Oh, why so downcast, oh my soul? You're hoping God and bless the Lord, oh my soul. One more time. Why so downcast, oh my soul? Hoping God, hoping God, hoping God. Oh, why so downcast, oh my soul? You're hoping God and bless the Lord, oh my soul. Bless the Lord, He's the lifter of my countenance. Bless the Lord, He's the lifter of my head. Bless the Lord, He's the lifter of my countenance. I will not be ashamed. Oh, I'm so downcast on my soul. Put your hope in God. Put your hope in God. Put your hope in God. Oh, why so downcast, oh my soul? Put your hope in God and bless the Lord, oh my soul. 42. 42. I've decided to turn these in half. For the sake of my arm. It works. There we go.
Doesn't wear your arm out, doesn't it?
A little bit. That's why I get the hamp on there. Effortless.
You can talk about.
What'd you say?
42.
I thought you said number 2. I was gonna say.
It's like, you missed it. Do number 1.
Breathe her out, Raj.
How great thou art, key of A. A. Go like 3 more songs. What do you think? 3 more. I'll pick one. I'm not shy. Let's do 24. 24 in Christ Alone. Because I like that song. Ready? Key of G. I don't know if you have that or not.
G?
G. Oh, you don't have it plugged, do you?
No, I can't hear you. My ears plugged.
Oh.
So I barely hear you.
Okay, so key of G, here we go. In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights above, why down? still when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all. Let's take a verse. Christ alone, unfledged, fullness of God in boundless faith, His gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones He came to save, till on that cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on Him was paid. In the death of Christ, it's a quick thought. When we're singing these songs, you have to remember the purpose of singing them. It's not because we're here to just, we're here to sing to God. That's the whole, we're singing to Him. We're going to be in heaven one day singing these anyway. Who knows what songs we'll be singing? Hopefully that song. But we're here as a family singing. That's all it is.
What about 25?
Let's pick a different one. No, I'm kidding. We fall down.
We have to pick on Jude.
I like it.
I don't think I know this one.
We fall down. I gotta sneeze. Nope, I don't. All right, we're gonna sing the first part, "We Fall Down," at the feet of Jesus twice. Then we'll go to the chorus and we'll do it again. Okay? So here we go. I'll start us off here, Roger, so you have an idea. Fall down, we lay our crowns at the feet of Jesus. The greatness of His mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. Here we go. We fall down, we lay our crowns at the feet of Jesus. The greatness of His mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. Let's do one more song. One more. You ready?
21.
Cornerstone. Yeah, sure. Let's do Cornerstone. Stone.
Cornerstone.
Cornerstone. Freudian slip there. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. One more time. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in seems the brightest thing. I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within Christ alone. Alright, good playing, Roger. I'm gonna need you Sunday too, so we'll have to talk.
Hopefully you'll have your hearing back by then.
He didn't hear you say that.
No, he didn't. I can't hear bored.
He said he hopes you have your hearing back by Sunday.
Well, it's that cold I got. With my ear, and I already can't hear good.
Yeah.
I can hear, like barely.
Right.
Like sometimes I can hear somebody talking, but I can't hear. What they say, hear a couple words.
You know sign language? Be good to learn it.
Too high.
You gotta communicate. Even when you can't hear.
I can hear a little bit, or if you talk loud enough. I gotta go by my own.
That was weird.
There's 3 light switches.
Yeah.
So, today, I'm going to go over something that I think is important for everybody to be able to talk to somebody about, and that is atheism. Because that is something I'm stalling here, so I'm just repeating the same thing.
That hits home.
I gotta make sure that, I gotta make sure the light didn't ruin the video. Anyway, so atheism is something that I run into all the time, especially door knocking and when I go to Walmart and things like that, and I tell people about, the gospel. It's usually not, oh, well, I'm you fill in the blank, religious. It's usually, how do you know there's a God? It's usually questions like that. So I think these questions will be very important. So here's the purpose. Acts 17:17, therefore he, Paul, reasoned in the synagogues with the Jews and with the Gentile worshippers, and in the marketplace daily with those who happened to be there. So you'll find this in Acts 17, right before he goes to Mars Hill and he debates with the Greeks. And what does he say there? In the marketplace daily, reasoning. What is reasoning? That's not him just talking to people and not accepting or answering questions. That's a dialogue. Tell me what you believe. Okay, well, this is why I believe, and this is my defense. It was a reasoning process. 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, with, and I've highlighted them, meekness and fear. Meekness, because you have to realize the purpose of telling somebody about Christ, to win them over, not to win a debate. If they insult you or whatever it is, you just got to brush it off and move on. But you have to have meekness and understand where they are in terms of eternity and where you are in terms of eternity. That should be our main goal. And fear, make sure you know what you're talking about. Because if you lead them the wrong way, well, then God will hold you accountable, and me, if you tell somebody something wrong and they die believing it. So, with fear. And then finally, 2 Timothy, I charge you before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. So he is telling Timothy, this isn't a request. This isn't an option, really. It is a command. You preach the word. And what does he say? In season and out of season. Anybody have any idea what that means?
It's convenient.
Convenient or not. Whether you feel like it or not, it doesn't matter. You stand up for God. You stand for God. He doesn't need our help. But you tell him the truth. And then with all long-suffering and doctrine. Again, that's kind of run with the same thing. Meekness, fear, long-suffering, and doctrine. Right? So, that's the purpose of these discussion questions, which will be, again, this is going to be this Thursday and next Thursday. This Thursday, we're only going to get to the first 2. Because to me, I think the most important, or the toughest question, not most important. 1, if God is all-loving and all-powerful, why does he allow evil and suffering to continue? I hear that a lot. And then the second one is, has science replaced God with the facts and evidence of evolutionary theory? Something that I am very adamant about. I hate evolution because so many people believe it. And the thing about it is, they don't really know it, but they just trust the scientists. They got it figured out. They'll let them handle it. Oh, evolution, I don't know it, but I trust my, my scientists. And then next week we're going to go over, with 3,000 plus religions in the world today, how do we know only Christianity is true? It's a lot of religions. If God created all things, who created God? That's a common question. Did God command genocide in the Old Testament? You read about Joshua going to the land of Canaan, and he says, you don't spare anybody, you kill them all. Drive them out. And you read about that in Joshua and Judges. Chapter number 6. What about all those who have never heard the name of Jesus? Who here has at least heard somebody bring that up? What if they've ever heard the name of Jesus? And then, if the Bible is God's perfect word, how can so many interpretations come about? If God wanted to get his message across, how can everybody get it? I mean, how can so many people get it wrong? Why didn't he just make it absolutely crystal clear? Right? Well, food for thought, but that'll be next Thursday. Today, I'm going to use this. These two. Okay. Is God all-loving and all-powerful? If he's all-loving and all-powerful, why does he allow evil and suffering to continue? I forgot to put all-knowing. He's all-knowing. So, what is the atheist arguing here? So atheism, by definition, means no God. He doesn't believe that there is a God. So no theism, God. Okay? And as a result, his morality, if he wants to bring this up, if this is really an argument for an atheist, why is God allowing all this? He can't exist. Look at the evil. If he's going to bring that up, he has to realize his only option... His only option for explaining morality is in light of two things. One, culture. Culture defines it. Who is in charge? They're the ones who define what's right and wrong. So society in terms of morality, based on popular vote. So most people generally agree, yeah, murder's wrong, so we're going to outlaw it. And then the second option for the non-believer, or the atheist, I guess, is instinct. It's just hardwired into our brains to react and act and respond to certain circumstances that without us really considering morality. Similar to a lion. A lion, when he is in charge, when he takes over, he'll kill all the baby lions, all the male lions. And why do you think that is? I mean, it's just instinctive because, well, if they start to grow up, what's going to happen? They're going to want to challenge his authority, his dominance. So he gets rid of them. Now, is this lion doing anything that's exactly immoral? Because every lion does it. Every single lion. How is it that every single lion makes a moral decision? I know it's wrong, I'm going to kill him anyway. No, it just does it by instinct. And if we are animals, why do we value life any more than a lion would the cubs? Okay, I don't have an example. I don't have this example up here, but another example is a mouse. If a mouse gets a litter of mice, little baby mice, hungry, well, there's its food. You will eat it. You will eat its young, no question, unhesitatingly, because it sees it as the source of food. Instinct. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't contemplate right and wrong. Okay, so again, any problems with? Any questions? What's so wrong with this one? This one really bothers me. I think we're pretty much aware that this is not the case. But what about that first one? Any problems with that?
Herd mentality is never a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So what if, food for thought, Hitler succeeded and he won World War II and he brainwashed the world into thinking what he did was absolutely okay? Well, according to this, he'd be right. Because it's basically, whatever is advantageous to me is right. Well, it was advantageous to me at the time to kill all the Jews, so I did it, and it was right.
It's not flat.
Yeah, so that's the problem. It's just, you have to base it on something else. Here's a guy for you. Who knows this guy? Humans have always wondered about the meaning of life. Life has no higher purpose than to perpetuate the survival of DNA. Life has no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. Now, most atheists have actually begun to distance themselves from this guy because he's made some pretty outlandish remarks, mock Christians because of their beliefs. So I'm not saying atheists are bad people. Like, he is very out there. But his statement, nonetheless, is very true. It's true. If an atheist rejects the idea of God, well then this is our purpose. To perpetuate, to keep the line going. Just make sure we have enough DNA so we can keep it going until the earth blows up or something. I don't know. What is the purpose of keeping it going?
Just a thought.
Yeah.
I wonder that if somebody robs his house or beats him up, he wouldn't be able to say anything because there's no evil.
Exactly. I asked my philosophy teacher that. I go, if
Don't go call the police.
Exactly. I asked my philosophy teacher that. I go, if I cheated on your test and I got away with it, is it okay? Because he believed us.
Really? What did he say?
He didn't say anything because he knew he had cornered him. He didn't. He just kind of chuckled. But what I did was I didn't let it linger out there. I kind of laughed at him, like not at him, but like kind of laughed with him to ease the tension. But I got my point across, because I wanted to get a good grade. So morality becomes subjective. How do you feel? Is this good for you? Okay, then it's good. Listen to this. Do you know who this man is, Aleister Crowley? He's a bad man. What does he say? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Who is that?
It's Aleister Crowley.
Yeah. He wrote
Bible.
the Satanic Bible. How is this any different than what the atheists would proclaim? Whatever you do shall be the whole of the law. Whatever you want to do will be the whole of the law. It's kind of interesting that it's in the Satanic Bible, because who do you think is really behind the scenes pushing this? Satan.
Yeah, that's a direct shot at the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law? I don't think so. Now, what is a Christian arguing exactly? So we heard the side of the atheist. What is a Christian saying here? God has placed intrinsic value upon every human being. What is intrinsic value? So, intrinsic value is saying you are made in the image of God and nobody has the right to look at you and say you are worth this much, because they're really not in charge of determining my worth. Because if they were in charge of determining my worth, well, what about somebody else who doesn't see eye to eye with them? They might think I'm not worth that much. See how the problem comes in? Well, she thinks my mom or my dad, you think I'm worth a lot, I hope. But somebody else who's my enemy might look at me and go, no, you're not worth that much. But God has established what we're worth. We're in His image. However, there is another way of looking at people, and that's instrumental value. What do you have to offer society? Communism. What do you have to offer? Oh, you're pretty good at that? Okay, you're worth something. That's, I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent here. Infants and elderly, that usually is what this does not benefit. Because an infant, why do you think that they have no problem aborting infants? Because they're not, to them, I mean, of course they're very valuable, but to them, they're not a human being. They're just a clump of cells until they're born. Here's the problem with that. How is it that, and I didn't even plan on talking about this, how is it that a woman who gives birth early, when she gives birth early, she will be considered a baby? But if it's geographically located in the womb, it's no longer a child. Geographically speaking, it's not a child. How can that be? Instrumental value. That's the point. And elderly, not quite as bad, but of course euthanasia, that is a thing. God established, so because we're valuable, He gave us a law to protect us and to guide us. Thou shalt, thou shalt not. Non-negotiable. I don't care how you feel about it. You can't kill anybody unlawfully. Of course, there is a point where you do take a life, but unlawfully, you can't just go out and have your own agenda, personal agenda, and do it. And He has made love the supreme ethic. We are not just a bunch of robots who are following a rigid kind of outline of how to live. It's love. And Jesus was asked this question. He said, what's the greatest commandment? And what does He say? Love thy Lord love thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. I thought it was strength. But either way, love God first. Boom. No matter what, that's the number one. Then, love thy neighbor as thyself. Because if you do that, you're not going to kill your neighbor. If you love him, you won't kill him. Make sense? Alright, so that's what God has given to us. This man right here. I'm pretty sure we've all, in some way, shape, or form, have heard this argument, but I will bring it up briefly. When you say there's too much evil in the world, you assume there's such a thing as good, right? Makes sense. There's good, there's evil. How do you know those two are evil and that one's good? You have to base it on a moral law. Something's telling you that it's good or bad, and you have to look at it. Well, if you assume there's a moral law, well, who gave that moral law? Who's the one who gave it to you? And as we've seen before, culture and instinct are very poor candidates for that particular idea, a moral law. So, he says, if that's who the atheists are trying to disprove. They're trying to disprove God. And he says, because if there's no moral law, if there's no moral lawgiver, there's no moral law. If there's no moral law, there's no good. If there's no good, there's no evil. What's the question? It's fine. Good point. Where do we get our morality from? So we base it on objectivity. Blessed is the man whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. So we should delight in it. It shouldn't be kind of like a begrudgingly, okay, I guess I gotta do these things. No, we should love it. It's a wonderful thing. We have a way of living. God's given this to us. Okay, so the intellectual problem of evil. This is going to get, it's not too complicated, but, nonetheless, we'll get into it. What is the atheist claiming here? The argument is usually made that, one, God is all-loving and all-powerful. Evil exists. Conclusion, no God. They contradict. You can't have a loving God and evil. Come on now. If he loves us, he wouldn't let anything bad happen to us ever, right? Like a parent would never let anything happen to a child. They would make sure, I'm just going to lock them in the room because they might get hit by a car. Oh, I can't let them go outside. You see how ridiculous and kind of strange it can get? God's not going to let anything bad happen to me. However, again, there's no direct contradiction, and explicit means direct. So direct would be like if you kind of understand how explicit versus implicit would be. If I said I love all shoes except for tan shoes, I hate tan shoes. Well, implicitly, I'm kind of implying I love blue shoes, right? I didn't directly state it. Now, if I directly state I love blue shoes, well, that's an explicit statement. These two have no explicit or direct contradiction. There's no reason to think God couldn't use evil in the world. If we add a third premise, God has morally sufficient reasons for allowing evil and suffering in the world. He may have good reasons for letting it happen. We don't know. Clicker. There we go. And it usually turns into this. Okay, maybe they are logically compatible. Maybe they don't contradict. But it's very unlikely. God wouldn't let that happen. It's improbable. He probably wouldn't let it happen. Well, how can anybody possibly know that? How do you know the mind of God? Nobody knows. Nobody knows the mind of God. Here's some reasons why he may, I suppose these are the goals of God. He says, God wants to create a world of free creatures who are responsible moral agents. Okay, so keyword is free. And the only way to do that is under a world that operates under certain natural laws. This only works if these laws are in place. I.e., the fire that warms you can also burn you. And the water that sustains you can also drown you. That's a fact of life. That's just the way it is. And this inevitably allows for the possibility of rebellion against God and evil to exist. Free creatures. Okay? If we're free, that means evil has a possibility of existing. Bottom line, we are not puppets. We are not machines. As Richard Dawkins, our goal is not just to perpetuate DNA. Okay? We're free moral agents. And if we begin to look at this, oh, this is a side note here. Is there a purpose for pain? I thought this was interesting. There's a disease out there called SIPO where you do not feel pain and your sweat glands don't work. I'm sure we all are in agreement that's not a good thing, but how badly does this get? If you do not feel pain and your sweat glands don't. So if you place your hand on a burner, or you step on a nail, or if you just sit there for too long and you don't move, bad things are going to happen. You're going to feel serious consequences are going to happen, right? You get third-degree burns, get an infection, and the reason why you kind of move around every now and then is because your body is still getting stiff and it's got to move. Well, these people with this disease, they don't know. They'll sit there like a statue, just hours, and their back's aching, and they don't even know. That's a bad thing. And if we humans can comprehend the usefulness of pain, you would think God would understand the purpose of pain and then that's the role it plays in our lives. This is very important. I want everybody to understand. This is God's desire for human beings. This is important to him. To bring people freely into the knowledge of himself into eternal salvation. His number one goal is salvation. He didn't, I guess I'll jump right into it, not pleasure and comforts in this life. This earth is not a terrarium for God's pets, okay? He's not so much worried about, oh, are you okay? Do you feel comfortable? Are you okay? I mean, do you have everything you in terms of money and comforts? Because what's going to happen when we get older? We're going to die. This life isn't everything. This is what he has in his mind. Will you be with me eternally? That's where it's at. Doesn't the Bible say, set your mind on things above and not on things on earth? Why? Because the things of the earth are passing away. Now, of course, I recognize the intellectual problem is more of a kind of philosophy, yeah. But pain is a real thing. It's not illusory. It's not like, it's out there in the void. Everybody feels it. Everybody experiences pain. And we have to deal with it. So I don't accept that. How can he simply watch a mass murder or a child slowly starve? I mean, that's a hard thing to consider. He sees that child starving. Can't he just, here's some bread. Have at it. Nobody's going to know about it. How's it going to harm anybody? Right? Well, what does the Bible say? God created every emotion a person can feel. So if you think you feel outraged and sad about this, he feels sad. Because we have a very finite idea of what is happening out there. We hear it on the news. Oh, that's horrible. God knows it all. Every single thing that has ever happened, he is fully aware of it, good and bad. So, so God created every emotion. Okay, so this is, again, he created every emotion because we're created in his image, right? We're made in his image. That includes his characteristics and his emotions. He has seen every single sin that has ever taken place. The eyes of the Lord are in every place beholding evil and good. So he's no dummy. He's not, I didn't know that. He knows everything that's going on. And he is grieved by wickedness. And God saw the wickedness of man. The wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So he knows. He hates it. He hates sin. He looks down and he wanted to destroy the world. But he had mercy and long suffering, and he cared for us. Because again, he's thinking of the future eternally. So how does God combat evil? He suffered. Who suffered? Christ suffered with us. He came here and suffered with us. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh and made alive by the Spirit. He is patient with us. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish but come to repentance. He's long-suffering. He sees the world, he knows what's going on, and he's aware of it, but he's patient. And he's gracious towards us. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. If we just believe, he says, you will be with me in eternity. Despite what happens on this earth, you're with me now. And there's a psalm, we're getting close to the end here for this particular question. There's a psalm, it's Psalm 73. David is fully aware of this fact of evil in the world, and he is distressed. It says, for I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For they have no pains until death. They're fine until they die. Their bodies are fat and sleek. They are not in trouble as others are. They are not stricken like the rest of mankind. Therefore pride is their necklace. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes swell out through fatness. Their hearts overflow with follies. They scoff and speak with malice. Loftily they threaten oppression. And he goes on and on. There's much more to this. He goes on and on and on. And what does he say? But when I thought how to understand this, it seemed like a wearisome task. Why? And then I went to the sanctuary of God and I considered their end. They are not on the side of victory. They had their moment on earth, but this earth is the closest they will ever get to heaven. Period. The people who reject God. So let them have their fun. Let them do what they want to do. If they really want to reject God and do well, fine. Our goal is to just tell them. And if they reject it, consider their end. You almost feel sad. You tell somebody and they just kind of look at you and they go, whatever. They feel sad. I feel sad. Wow. Because one day, I see their face. I go, I might actually have to watch you on a day of judgment get thrown into a pit of fire for eternity. That should grieve us as it grieves God. That should be on our mind.
What should it profit a man?
To gain the whole world and lose his soul. Exactly. So that was the big one here. I don't even know what time it is. But now we're going to get into my specialty.
7:50.
7:50. I don't know what time it even ends. 8:15? Okay, time is rapidly moving on. Okay. Has science replaced God with the facts and evidence of the evolutionary theory? What do we think, people? What do you think? Yes, no? Alright. Creation and evolution cannot be proved scientifically. Let's just get that out there. You want to prove God exists? That's wonderful. They want to prove evolution exists. That's fine. Neither can be done. Because the scientific method is only useful when investigating observable activity. I have never seen anything created in my life. But, because we know it ceased on the seventh day, God rested. But macroevolution is also so slow, you would believe it. It's millions and billions of years. We live maybe 80 to 90 years, okay? Nobody can observe macroevolution. We'll get into that later. So therefore we use what's called inference of the best explanation, which is we take all the evidence and then we determine what the best explanation would be. And if at any point the view in question is contradictory to the evidence, it is invalid. Because if the evidence says one thing and then your theory says another, well, we have evidence. Come on now. That theory can't be true. It has to line up perfectly. And just a side note, it also has to be true when we're talking about religion. So if I talk about Jesus Christ and Him crucified, well, okay, let's look at what happened in the past. It's a falsifiable theory. You can falsify it. Was there a man named Jesus? Okay, well, was He crucified? Okay, well, how do we know this? Do we have evidence? Yeah, we have eyewitnesses. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. It's a falsifiable claim. Many religions are not. For example, Christianity rises and falls on Christ. What did Paul say? If Christ isn't risen, our faith is in vain. Buddhism does not rise and fall on Buddha. If he never existed, you could still have Buddhism. Hinduism, you do not need whoever that guy, Confucius, I don't know, whatever that religion is. You don't need that guy. You can have the theory and the philosophy without the guy. You can't really falsify it. Christianity, you can. Because our claim is historical. Jesus died. He rose again. Let's find out what happened. And we have the Bible. You were going to say something?
A true scientific theory never tries to prove something true. It takes something that is known and tries to prove it false.
Exactly.
You don't try to prove a theory. You just try to prove facts.
Right, yeah.
Evolution is just a theory.
It's just a theory, if you want to call it that. You're giving a lot of credit there to call it a theory. Alright, so evolution has three main pillars. One, the fossil record. So the record of previous evolutionary activity. The rocks tell a story. They'll tell us what happened. Natural selection is the engine that drives evolution. And then genetic mutations. The unguided. Can I stress this, please? Unguided force that spawns new and improved animal traits. So, your cell just mutates and, hey, look, I got another trait. That's cool. Another mutation. And before you know it, you got a new species. That's their idea. If any one of these is proven inadequate, the entire theory crumbles. Kind of going back to the previous statement. And this is Charles Darwin. I would give absolutely nothing. I would just get rid of this theory of natural selection if it required miraculous additions at any stage of descent. If I were convinced that I required any such additions to the theory of natural selection, I would reject it as rubbish. So, miracles out of the question. Cannot salvage this theory because Darwin rejected it. Who knows this? Who's seen this before? Yeah? It's a tree of life. I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm like 99% sure, you go to any textbook, they are going to have this in that book. And they're going to, oh yeah, this is it. Yeah, see all these? Okay, we started with this little protoplasm and then, woo, hey, we got scorpion. What else? Over time, we got monkey. What was that thing called? Donkey. Horse. And, boy, it sure sounds good, but you know what they're missing here? At the very tips of these trees, yeah, we got the animals, but there's something missing. What about, like, right there? What about there? There's something that's called an intermediate form that we do not have. We have lots of fossils for, eagles and, trees and whatever, crabs. We got fossils up the wazoo like no crazy. I mean, we have so many, hundreds of millions of fossils. Stephen Jay Gould, he was a professor of geology and paleontology at Harvard University. He's no schmuck. The family trees which adorn our textbooks are based on inference, however reasonable, not on the evidence of fossils. So, next time we see that in a textbook, we can just know that it's just them and their imagination, according to that guy. Now, intermediate forms. The very idea of evolution over millions of years suggests tremendous amounts of death. Makes sense. With the help of mutations and natural selection, the animals that have the best traits will be passed on, and the weaker animals will die off. That's survival of the fittest, right? If you got a better trait than your neighbor, I guess not your neighbor, but like if a lion is bigger and stronger, he's going to survive the longest. And he's going to pass on those traits to his offspring.
You ever wonder why we still have gnats then, really?
Gnats?
Like, why do gnats still exist? Shouldn't they have died like millions of years ago?
You know, that's a good question. Who knows? And that's a question that they can't answer. If they were here, they couldn't answer that either. I can't answer that for you. I wish I could. That's for them. As a result, there should be visible progression of complexity within the fossil record. So just on this fact alone, that over time, better traits will be passed on. If you started with a cell, just a very basic cell, and you, based on evolution, started getting better and better, and then those animals died off. But their offspring lived on. They were better and more complex. Pretty soon you got legs, and you got a heart, and you got eyes, and you got this and that. Well, you'll see that happening because there's tremendous amounts of death. This is not a slow process. It takes millions of years. Over millions of years, a lot of things are going to die, and you will have you'll have like a half fish, half thing. Right here, a lizard. They say a lizard turned into a bird. That's fine. We have birds and lizards, but you know, give a few million years, you got a half bird, half lizard thing, right? And something like that. And then millions of years, you got a bird. They had to evolve into the bird. Where are the half lizard, half bird creatures that we should see in the fossil record? There should be millions of them. Millions. All right. So what did Darwin hope to see? He said this. He goes, "Why then?" And he had the same question. He saw this just as much as we see today. Why then why not in every geological formation, in every stratum, layer of rock, are there not full of intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this, perhaps, is the most obvious and gravest objection that can be urged against my theory. And he says this. Oh, there's hope in the future. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record. We don't have enough fossils. We haven't dug deep enough. Keep digging. Okay. All right, understandable. 1900s, they didn't really have a complete record. Do we now? Now, after 120 years of the most extensive, painstaking geological exploration of every continent and ocean bottom, the picture is indefinitely more vivid and complete than it was in 1859. Formations have been discovered containing hundreds of billions of fossils, and museums around the world are now filled with over 100 million fossils of 250,000 different species. Okay? The availability of the profusion of hard scientific evidence should permit objective investigators to determine if Darwin was on the right track. Now, okay, we have the evidence now. Let's take a look at it. According to this guy, he's no slouch. I didn't put his credentials here, but he's a paleontologist, evolutionist too, by the way, mind you. What is the consensus? So here we go. Ready? What do they say? My attempts to demonstrate evolution by experiment, carried on for more than 40 years, have completely failed. He did this for 40 years. The fossil material is now so complete that it has been possible to construct new classes, and the lack of transitional series cannot be explained as being due to the scarcity of materials. The deficiencies are real. They will never be filled. He's a professor at Lund University, Sweden. Next, Niles Eldredge, this guy. He works at the American Museum of Natural History. Big museum, a lot of fossils there. What does he say? Darwin himself prophesied that future generations of paleontologists would fill these gaps by diligent search. 120 years of paleontology research later, it has become abundantly clear that the fossil record will not confirm this part of Darwin's predictions, nor is the problem a miserably poor record. The fossil record simply shows that this prediction was wrong. He's an evolutionist, by the way, still defends it. This is my buddy, Stephen Jay Gould. The absence of fossil evidence of intermediary stages between major transitions in organic design indeed are inevitably, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages between major transitions in organic design. Indeed, our inability, even in our imagination, to construct functional intermediates in many cases has been a persistent and nagging problem for graduistic accounts of evolution. This is just a lot of scientific mumbo jumbo. There are none. There's just none. It just doesn't work for them. And then finally, this guy right here, he does not want to admit it, but he says, yet Gould, the guy before, and the people at the American Museum are hard to contradict when they say there are no transitional forms. I'll lay it on the line. There's not one such fossil for which one can make a watertight argument. And just, I don't have it on here, but just to show you how desperate they are, they came out, this guy right here, Gould and Eldridge, they came up with a theory called punctuated equilibrium. And what that is, okay, so maybe it didn't take millions of years. Maybe the lizard laid an egg. I don't know, do lizards lay eggs? But I don't know, whatever happened. The lizard laid an egg, and within a generation or two, a bird, a fully formed bird came out. And interestingly, there was a I don't remember his name, but there was a man who used to write kind of like cartoon stories and kind of like non-fiction fiction stories. And he came up with something called the hopeful monster theory, and he presented it to the scientific community long before they accepted it, and they laughed at him. That's ridiculous. But it started to become more and more, you know, that sounds pretty good because this is not working for us, and now they've adopted it. Yeah, I guess that guy was right. All right, Darwin. But as by this theory innumerable, why did I use this font? But as by this theory innumerable transitional forms must have existed, why do we not find them embedded in countless numbers of the crust of the earth? Hoaxes. So what do? They fake them. Due to the absence of intermediate fossils, several attempts to pass them off as fake fossils as the real ones. You get the idea. They fake them. This book is a book that I've been reading. It's pretty interesting, and it slams evolution so hard. Yeah, I'll take some water. It slams evolution so hard. I love it. I read it all the time. And this is just a quote I wanted to read. While some were honest mistakes by dedicated, well-meaning individuals, others were perpetrations by egotistical and disillusioned people who harbored inherent biases against everything non-evolution, including religion, especially Christianity, and against traditions, moral and social mores. So these people just have an agenda. They don't care. And then this, a 5 million-year-old piece of bone that was thought to be a collarbone of a human-like creature is actually part of a dolphin rib. The problem with a lot of anthropologists is they want so bad to find a hominid, which is a prehistoric human, that any scrap of bone becomes a hominid bone. That's a bone. Get it out of the dirt, Joe. Look at that. That's a hominid bone. Oh, it's a rib for a dolphin. All right, we'll keep looking. See, it's like they can't wait. Oh, we're gonna find them.
The Scopes trial.
Yeah,
in the 1920s. Are we going to cover that?
Well, I don't have it on here, but this is just a list of things. People, you know, Peking Man, Lucy, gotta go see Lucy. It's all fake. They're lies. All of them. Let's take a look at them. Hilltown Man, Orc Man, they don't have good names. Okay? Lies. And I didn't want to get into them all because, you know, there's a lot to it. But
well, the evidence why they started teaching evolution in school is actually the tooth of a pig.
Right. Scope
They were
trial.
the tooth of a man, it was the tooth of a pig. And that's when they started teaching it in school. It's crazy.
Alright. Rapidly moving on here. Natural selection. What time is it? I got time. I'm gonna drag this out. I'm just kidding. The process whereby organisms better adapted to their environment tend to survive and produce more offspring. Again, natural selection. You got better traits, you're gonna be the one to survive. Eskimos have adapted to life in freezing cold. Michiganders have adapted to the life in the freezing cold. Peppered moths. Who's heard of that? The peppered moths, yeah? So the evolutionists argue, okay, well, there used to be this white moth that would survive on the bark of trees that were white. And over time, the evolution, the black moths started to survive longer and the white moths started to die out. Why? Well, they forget to tell you that there was an industrial revolution, and pollution became a thing, and the white bark became dark from pollution. So which ones do you think are going to stand out more, the white or the dark? The white ones are going to sit out more, and the birds are going to eat those ones. And given enough time, the black ones are going to thrive, and the white ones are going to be really struggling to survive. That's not natural selection. That's like luck. Oh, it's a good thing the Industrial Revolution hit. Now I'm not going to get eaten. I can sit on this tree. I won't be seen. It's luck. Galapagos finches. Again, who's heard of that one? You know, the beaks in the Galapagos Islands? Well, it's as simple as this. You have beaks that are thick and short, and you have beaks that are long and skinny. And the ones that, during the dry spells, well, there's a shortage of food, and the only ones that can survive are the ones that can get deep into the tree. Well, the ones with the shorter beaks are going to die off. But we know that there's a process. There's like a seasonal changes, and as soon as there's plenty of food, guess who starts to come back around? The thick, short beaks. It's in the DNA. And if they can survive, they'll survive, but there's always going to be both. It's not evolution, it's adaptation, which is microevolution versus macroevolution. Remember I talked about macroevolution? We accept microevolution. I don't like the name, but it is what it is. Variation within a species. You got a big, in terms of dogs, you got big and small, short hair, long hair, blue eyes, green eyes. You know, you got the Great Dane and the Chihuahua. The most useless dog I've ever seen is the Chihuahua. Okay, sorry. But either way, look, variation. There's lots of different kinds of dogs. But we reject macroevolution, which would be a rock turning into the rock. Okay? That's what it is. You got a rock, give it enough time, you're going to get a human, the rock. Okay. Note the eyebrow, please, people, the eyebrow. Okay.
Cool.
Homology. This is something that they use as an argument for evolution. The state of having the same or similar relation, relative position, or structure. Forearms of a human, of a cat, of a whale, and of a bat. Very, they say it's very similar. I guess I don't see it. I mean, maybe these two, but this kind of doesn't. They get highlighted they got the right colors, but they use this as an example. See, it's been passed on, these traits. Look, you started with a fin, and given enough time, look, it kept the same structure. Well, is that common ancestor or is that common design? Because if the structure works, does God have to come up with another structure every single time he creates something? Engineers don't do that. Hey, if that works, we're going to keep it going. We'll modify it, make it a little different, but it's going to be the same structure. Kent Hovind says, the lug nuts on a Chevy will screw onto a Pontiac. This proves they must have evolved from a skateboard. Right? Makes sense. No. It's a common design. Vestigial organs. Leftover useless organs of our past. So, problems with this argument. And they have a number of arguments, a number of things like the wisdom teeth or the appendix. You don't need your appendix. You can live without it. Okay, what about, there's the very tailbone, the very end of the spinal cord called the coccyx. Well, they say these are all vestigial organs. If vestigial organs do exist, then this would indicate information loss, not gain. Evolution needs information. It can't afford to lose a bunch of information. And they're saying, well, no, you're losing this. You don't need it, so let's get rid of it. That's pretty smart of evolution to know that it doesn't need it. I could use a tail, to be honest. I would not mind a tail. Apparently, it decided I didn't need it. All right, now, this is where this came from. This guy right here, he made a list of 180 organs that we did not need. And guess what? We discovered functions for just about all of them. Every one of them that he listed, well, given enough time, we know that they have a function. And then finally, within the biblical model, degeneration is expected, right? Because of the fall. The fall subjected the creation to bondage of decay. Not of decay. Romans 8, of which mutation of the generation is one example. So this, again, is not an example against it. It's for it. I had something else I wanted to say here. Whatever. Oh, yeah. You can live without your arms and legs. You could survive. Are they vestigial? No. You need your arms and legs. But can you live without them? Sure. You can live without your appendix, but it serves a function. It has something to do with the bile or the liver or something like that. It holds toxins. That's why if your appendix is rupturing, get it out. It's going to kill me. Because it serves a purpose. All right. Primitive limitation. I promise we won't go on that much longer. But regarding the breeding and can natural selection, is there a limit to variation? Sure. Wait a minute. Why is my... Well, I guess we just have I guess I forgot to put animation on here. Whenever variation is pushed to the extremes by selective breeding, to get the most milk out of cows, sugars from beets, bristles of fruit flies, and yada yada, the line becomes sterile and dies out. So these animals are not doing great. They're actually doing worse. We're pushing them. We need more milk, so we're trying to push their capabilities. And as one characteristic increases, others diminish. So yeah, we're getting more milk, but something else is happening bad, right? It can't reproduce. A donkey, or is it a mule? A mule can't reproduce. Well, that's great. It's fine until it gets old. Well, then, okay, we gotta do the whole breeding process again. It's a bad thing. And just to be clear, evolutionary theory puts absolutely no limit on what mutation, random mutation, natural selection can invent. Saying that everything in nature was invented by it. Everything. What is everything? Well, here's a little slice of things that evolution came about. And I highlighted some. I went through all of them, and the ones I highlighted are pretty interesting. Autofocus. Bioluminescent, when a jellyfish is when it lights up and you can see it, that's pretty neat. That fish with the thing and it light, that's something that evolution created. Did you know that? Eyes. Darwin said he couldn't believe it in evolution. He goes, an eye? Are you kidding me? I don't have the quote, but he goes, there's no way. Darwin said that. What else we got? Lungs. You look at the lungs of a bird and the lungs of a fish, they're like the polar opposite. How do you even begin to go from a fish to a bird? What's the first thing that goes? Or does something come in? I don't know. Breathing. Breathing. How did the evolution know we needed to breathe specific things like oxygen? And some animals don't need to do that. Bacteria don't need to breathe. Bee dancing. Insect queens, spider webs, feathers, decision making, language, memory, emotional center of the brain, circulatory systems. We'll get into this slightly, maybe later, proteins and things like that. But all of these, and this is a small fraction of what's out there, evolution made it. All of it. And then symbiosis. This is just a relationship, mutual relationships between animals. So, I guess I have an example up here. So, mutual relationships. We'll just kind of pass through these real quick. If each animal mutated and evolved one at a time, how is it that they become independent to each other? Darwin said that. He said if this could be proved to be true, that a structure was formed just for the benefit of another species, it would annihilate my theory. Well, we just so happen to have one specific example. This, I can't believe how long, either I'm talking for a long time or I kind of misjudged my amount of slides. Here's the anatomy of a flower. You have right here the stigma. This whole thing is the female part of the flower. This is where the seed is made. These gold things, this is where the pollen is. The pollen needs to get to this part. If the pollen doesn't get here, you don't get a seed, you don't get a flower. And there are certain plants that need help. This is called a yucca plant, and this is called a yucca moth. Alright, so the yucca plant can't pollinate on its own. Some can, some can't. This one can't. And it's very interesting how this happens. One, the moth will land on the flower, okay? And it will take a special antenna. See this? Remember I said the pollen's on these things right here? Well, this has special antenna that will reach out and grab a bunch of the pollen and stuff it under its neck. Okay? Did you raise your hand?
No, I was just going.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So it'll reach up. Okay. Once it's got the pollen on its hand, it's going to fly to another flower. And once it wants to lay eggs, well, it's going to take one egg, or maybe a couple, and it's going to put it right in this part where the seed would germinate. It's going to take a bunch of eggs and stuff them in there. And then it's going to take that pollen that was on the bottom of its neck, and it's going to put it, would you believe it, right there. Right where the flower needs it. And you know why? Because it needs food. Its young needs food. So when the eggs begin to hatch, that flower will produce a seed. And guess what they get to munch on? The seed. And the moth knows this. So it goes, okay, well, unless I do this, my young are going to die because they won't have food. And it doesn't stop there. This moth knows that this plant has a limit. It will not allow the moth to put too many eggs inside of its ovary right here. And if it does, the plant will abort the flower. It will not. It will kill the flower because it's going to say, all right, we could spend all our energy making this seed. It's not going to benefit us. Get rid of the flower. It knows that. And the moth knows it knows that. So what it does, it sprays a pheromone on this flower, letting other moths know, hey, I've already laid eggs in here, be careful, because if you put too many in, the plant's gonna get rid of this particular flower, and our eggs are gonna die. So the other moths know, okay, let's count the eggs, oh, too many, I can't put them in here. And the moth monitors this, and it makes sure that its young do not eat all of the seeds. Why? Because, well, when the young grow up, it's gonna need a plant. And if there's no plants, no seeds, no plants. So it makes sure that seeds stay alive, or enough of them stay alive. That's incredible. So the moth is fed by the seeds, and the plants are pollinated because of the moths. And this moth is the only moth that will pollinate this plant. No other insect, no other plant. No other insects can pollinate that. And it's also interesting, I can't verify, I'm pretty sure I read something, certain moths, bigger moths will pollinate certain plants, smaller moths. It gets even more intricate. But this is a relationship where, how did these both evolve at the same time and come into this relationship? Either they both die off, or one would not restrict its pollination to this. It would let any insect. We need help. Why is it just this moth that's the only one that's helping it? And Darwin said that will annihilate my theory. Theory annihilated. All right. And then this is very, very quick. I show you mutations, because I made this earlier today. Mutations. So this is the third pillar, right? Mutations occur during divisions in the cell. Okay. There's different kinds of cells. You have the cells of skin, right? Or you have the cells in the reproductive organs, right? When a mutation occurs in a somatic cell, like a defect, like a wart or something, that's not going to get passed on. That's just bad cell division. Something happened, and it's an individual occurrence. But when something happens in a reproductive cell, then you have consequences. And the only mutations that can be passed on are in the gamete cell. Right. Okay, so we take a look at DNA. Within the DNA, there's a blueprint. DNA is a blueprint found in every single cell. And this DNA is made up of a bunch of nucleotides, A's, G's, T's, and C's. Going back to chemistry here. Alright, and when the cell begins to divide, so if you fall and scrape your knee, you got a gash. And now your body goes, we need more skin cells because this thing's bleeding. So then it triggers this response, and it starts to make proteins, or starts to divide. Okay, make cells. Well, your one cell has a strand of DNA. Well, if you're going to make two cells, how many DNA do you need? 2 DNA. So it starts to produce DNA. And it's a very complicated process. You have something that unwinds the DNA, because we have something, it's a DNA helix. It's tightly wound, incredibly tightly wound. And it actually is folded, and it's just a wild information storing system. But it's tightly wound. So you need a protein that's going to unwind it. And then you need something that's going to read it. So you have DNA polymerase. And then you need something that's going to copy it to make RNA. Or in terms of cells dividing, it's DNA. It's going to make another set of DNA. And then the RNA, excuse me, I made a mistake here. This is for a different process. I meant to delete that. And then protein synthesis begins. This is for if your body needs if your cell needs another protein, well, it's going to go through this process. It's a whole other process. It's amazing. But anyway, here's the DNA. Okay? You got this long strand of DNA, and it needs to divide it. So this is the DNA polymerase that we were talking about. This is what's going to build the DNA. Every one of these, this is an A, this is a G, this is a T, this is a C. These are little things. These are called nucleotides. The nucleotides are going to come floating over, boom, attach. Or right here, see? It's going to come over, boom, attach, and then you're going to slowly but surely have this long chain of DNA. It's a miracle. It's amazing. And every one of these little machines, this is obviously a cartoon, but there's hundreds of things that are involved in this process. And they all have one specific job. This one makes sure that the DNA on this side, all the way over there, stays in shape. Okay? This is like a giant wedge that wedges in between there and pulls the original DNA, it pulls them apart so that this guy and this guy can come in and start putting it all together. Right? And these DNA polymerase, they have something that's a proofreader on the very end of it. While it's building it, something's behind it. It's kind of like monitoring it. Oh, that's not right. Back it up. They back up, they get rid of it, and they put the right one on there. It's amazing. It's a proofreading system. And they are relying... Oh, yeah. So, okay. So then you have this. This is a whole other process. it gets crazy, folks. But so they're relying on the mistakes of this process. Oh, I hope they make mistakes, because then that would mean a mutation, and a mutation might mean a new trait, and then a new trait over time, new species, and there you have evolution. So they're relying on mistakes. The DNA transcription process makes mistakes that can lead to mutations. The DNA polymerase, that thing that puts the A's, G's, T's, and C's together, that thing, it has a machine that proofreads it. I already mentioned that. These mutations are very harmful, but at times, at best, they're neutral. They'll correct a mistake that already occurred. So they might put a wrong A on a T, or whatever the case may be. That's a mutation, and it might correct it over time. Who knows? And mutations are so infrequent, they're so rare. Don't think mutations happen. They're very rare, because this is a good process. They're very rare, and it is irrational to consider their incidence as being remotely relevant to any hypothesis. It happens so rarely that that's it. That's a major part of your hypothesis. It rarely happens.
Oh, it's hideous too.
Yeah. And mutations, this is how often they happen. 1 every 10 millionth attempt at a cell division. So 10 million cells divide, you might have a mutation. Maybe. And it might not even go unnoticed. And that mutation might get corrected by this. That special machine, it might get corrected. Okay? And so again, on average, that's 1 minute. Evolution will require hundreds of these things simultaneously happening to be beneficial to the process of evolution. This is the last slide. No, I lied. 2 more. Problems. The result of such copying errors are tragically familiar. In body cells, the cell that, if your body needs a new cell for like a skin, for the skin, in body cells, faulty replication shows itself as cancer. Sunlight's mutagenic or mutation-inducing, so sunlight is bad. This mutation power causes skin cancer. The cigarette mutagenic power causes lung cancer. In somatic or in gamete cells, sexual cells, faulty reproduction of the whole chromosome number 21 results in Down syndrome. Negative. There's a lot of negatives. And you know what they use? Malaria. Malaria. If you get malaria, you're not going to get. Excuse me, not malaria. If you have sickle cell, that's a mistake. If you have sickle cell anemia, you won't get malaria. That's great. But what are the downsides? Well, what is sickle cell anemia? Your cells are shaped like a sickle. The blood cells are shaped like a sickle. And as it travels through your arteries or your veins, it's going to get hooked on. And then other cells are going to get hooked on. And what does that cause? A clot. And then what's that going to do to you? It's going to cause a stroke or a heart attack. It's going to harm you. That's the benefit? You don't get malaria? Okay, well, it's like if you get your foot cut off, you will not get athlete's foot. Did you know that? Wow. That's what the equivalent of sickle cell anemia. Should be a sickle cell. Malaria is horrible. Okay, they've done hundreds of tests of fruit flies, and not one of them has been identified. They've nuked them, put them in ovens, all kinds of X-rays, and they got cells with curled wings, flies with curled wings, no wings, extra legs, and they all died. They're horrible, like monstrosities. No benefits. So the bottom line is, they're rare, very rare. They're harmful virtually every time, and you need millions of them just to get your foot in the door to get a new trait. And even at that point, you're really. You got a long road ahead of you. And also, you need any new information. If you want to put, if you want a new, you have a computer and you want a new kind of function, what do you need? You put software into it. Mutations just scramble what's there. You don't get anything new. You just get something a little bit different. Variations. Hey, look at that. Big dogs, little dogs. You want a different kind of dog, a different kind of animal? You need something new. You don't get something new in mutations. Okay, you want a computer? Mutations is a pathological, a disease process which has little or nothing to do with evolution. He's an evolutionist, so this guy doesn't agree. It's funny how when we go to the fossil record, evolutionists say there's no fossils. You go to natural selection, evolutionists say it's not that good of a process. You go to the mutations, they say there's really no benefit to mutations. Well, what are they looking at? I mean, what are they relying on here? I don't get it. Here's why. You want to know why? Here you go. I do not want to believe in God. Therefore, I choose to believe in that which I know is scientifically impossible. Spontaneous generation arising to evolution. Spontaneous generation, you know what that is? You have a bunch of chemicals, give it enough time, you'll get a cell. That's spontaneous generation. And you know who disproved that? Louis Pasteur. We know that? That's a big name in science. He proved that life doesn't pop into existence. So, this is the last slide. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which may be known of God is known in them, for God has shown it to them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. So that they are without excuse, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and foolish heart was darkened. So remember when David said, I considered their end, right? Well, this is why God is judging this world, because they hold the truth in unrighteousness. They knew God, but they didn't worship him as God. They gave themselves over to these vain imaginations. If you read on, he talks about, I gave them over to a reprobate mind. Okay, fine. Yeah, if that's what you believe, go ahead. Go ahead, you can go believe it. And he stopped working. He's, okay, that's your choice. And that's it. So, I hope you can see, and those are just the two. Those are the two big ones. You can see why I only did 2 questions. Next week we'll do the others. There's a lot of questions about this, but there's answers. And when it comes to evolution, you have to understand, it's not just like, we got a lot of evidence. We have all the evidence, all of them. There are things I didn't even go over. They have something called polystrate trees. They say, okay, you have millions of years that gone by, and each one of these layers is millions of years old. Really? Why do you have a tree going through 4 of them? And it's upside down. How is that possible? Did that tree balance upside down for millions of years while dust kind of settled around it?
Flood.
No, a flood. Mount St. Helens, you know what happened? Boom, Mount St. Helens blew up. And it sent trees and dirt flying into a lake below called Spirit Lake. Well, those trees landed in that water, and then over time that dust kind of settled over it. And what do you know? You have something that looks just like the Grand Canyon. Just like it. And it happened in a moment. Evolution has no leg to stand on in geology or any of these other fields. So, I guess let's say a prayer and dismiss. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you, God, for the truth that we have answers. Lord, you have not left us in the dark. You have command over science, philosophy, you know, every field that there is to study, God, you are made known, and it's a shame that people are willing to put their trust in these scientists who willingly admit that they know it's a bunch of, you know, foolishness, but they choose to believe it anyway just to get away from you. And God, one day they will pay for that. You know, they will be held accountable. But we also have a job to learn this and to share it and to pray for these people. So I pray, God, that you would be with us and help us to make it our goal to know this thing. We don't know these things. And in Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right.
I read this article, I mean, interesting Genesis, and I don't remember the details, but it was something. It was something about chalk, how chalk generally forms near the ocean or sea.
So when you have,
But they found a chalk deposit in Kansas.
yeah.
It's like that's nowhere near the ocean. How did it get there?
They found
Flood.
mollusks at the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Shells.
Yeah.
Seashells.
Yeah.
At the top of Mount Everest.
How to get there?
Frozen in a chunk of ice.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
What does
How
that
to get there?
sound? Because Mount Everest wasn't a mountain during the flood.
Right.
It was flat.
Right.
Oh God, what happens to
Yeah.
frogs when the deep's broken up? Boom, you got a mountain. That's what these shells get.
Yeah. The evidence of the flood is overwhelming.
Yeah. And what you're talking about, the stratum,
Yeah.
so rock layers. Yeah, they have these layers dated at like millions, hundreds of millions of years. Well, you know that Mount St. Helens incident? Well, they took a rock from Mount St. Helens, brand new stuff. They dated it at like millions of years.
Yeah.
Really? Just for
It's clearly different, yeah.
But that dating method you're using isn't so accurate.
Yeah.
They found living tissue in a T-Rex thigh bone. Living tissue. They said if you took the most extreme care of preserving DNA, you froze it, and if didn't see sunlight. You have that best 10,000 years before that thing starts to decay. How in the world? They said they're extinct 60 million years ago.
Yeah,
How do you have a dinosaur with cells in it?
they're still,
That's crazy. Crazy.
yeah.
And it gets, as you begin to go over it, you start to see why these scientists are like, okay, we gotta rethink this. It's crazy. You know the guy who discovered DNA, the double helix, the twisty thing that goes into DNA?
Yeah.
His name is
You need help
Sir
packing?
Francis Crick.
You need help packing anything up? You good? Okay. No, I'll leave it.
There's a guy named Sir Francis Crick, and he's the one who discovered DNA. He was a Nobel Prize winner in anatomy and physiology. And he gave himself up to a theory called directed panspermia. You know what that is? That is literally, you can read it for yourself, I'm not making it up. Alien seeded the planet. Why did he say that?
Because you can't prove that they're not, because you don't know where they are anymore. There's
Well,
no proof.
he's looking at his DNA thing.
Hiding
He's going-
behind what you can't see.
He's going, there's no way
Which is what
DNA
they accuse
can-
us of.
He's going, there's no way DNA evolved. Look at this thing. No way. Look at it here.
Right. Instead of thinking
Was it God?
No,
No, it was aliens.
But you're crazy for believing something you can't see.
Yeah. So I can't believe it. Anyway, I got you.
Crazy.
That's not,
Thank you.
sorry about like, you and us.
Okay, I don't get it.